Hi there, and welcome back to your favorite space where the thoughts are a little elevated and the conversation gets a little real. I am your host, Miss Hi There, and today I have some thoughts on my mind that I need to yap about. Okay, I want to talk about vampires. Now, just hear me out, okay? I'm not going to lie, I am a Twilight fangirl, but we are not here to talk about romanticized monsters. Oh no. No, no, no. We're diving deep into the dark, twisted history of vampire lore. We might even discuss a vampire cult. We'll see where this journey takes us. So, if you haven't already, go ahead and do some gardening. I did some earlier. And sit back, relax, maybe grab a snack, grab a drink. I know I need one. Let's dig deep into vampire lore. So, vampires, they did not start off as these tall, dark, mysterious, emotionally unavailable men. Oh no, they actually came from old Eastern European folklore. Like, we're talking the 1700s. And back then, people genuinely, truly believed in vampires. This was not fiction to them. This was something is wrong in our village and we don't know why and we need an explanation. So keep in mind that this was before modern medicine. So people started getting sick or dying one after another. They wanted a reason why. So they went ahead and created a reason. A lot of what we now call vampires were probably just misunderstood things like disease, decomposition, maybe even just grief. We all know grief makes us do crazy things. It's so sad when you think about it. Like, imagine losing someone, and instead of just grieving them and going through the motions, you're just scared that they're going to come back and get you. So, with that being said, that's where things get a little intense. When the village suspected that someone might be a vampire, they didn't just like ignore it. No, they went right to the person's grave. They would dig up the body and look for signs. So, if the body looked too preserved or bloated, or if it had blood around the mouth, which we now know is normal decomposition. But back then, to them, that meant the person had been feeding. So they had to stop it from happening again. What they would do, they would take a stake to the heart, they would cut the head off of the body, they would even burn the body. Sometimes they would just stuff rocks into the mouth of the corpse to prevent it from biting. Like, imagine being so scared of a vampire coming and you're like, yeah, let's go dig up that body real quick and check it out. Absolutely not. Nope. Nope. If I'm if I'm scared that is a vampire in there, I'm moving over to the next village. What do you mean? And I need you guys to understand this. Vampires, they were not cute. They were described as bloated, dark, stretched skin, corpse like. I mean, quite literally describing what a corpse would be. Which just goes into the part that they just did not understand decomposition. And they weren't mysterious or seductive. It was just deeply unsettling. So, like, when you guys are out there saying, I want a vampire boyfriend, which version do you want? Because historically, I don't think you do. Fictionally, do you want the Edward Cullen? Because there's a lot to unpack in that too. He's also toxic. He's not good for you, girl, either. In the 1890s, everything changed. Dracula came out, and vampires, they became charismatic. They were charming, they were seductive, they were intelligent, still dangerous. Since then, we now have a lot of fictional vampire stories where the vampire is the love interest. It means at some point, someone really said, what if this blood sucking, decrepit creature was emotionally complex and hot? And society just went with it. Like, What are we doing? Now, I do want to mention, like, the rules of vampires and how inconsistent they are. Like, we're talking about an immortal being that's strong and fast. Garlic? Garlic takes them out. I had to look this up. I had to look it up because I'm like, where the heck does the garlic lore come from? Well, apparently, Eastern Europeans just thought that garlic was particularly pungent and strong smelling, that they thought the aroma would just keep vampires away. So they would hang bulbs of garlic outside their front door. Now, me personally, if I'm walking down and I see garlic on someone's front door, I think, hell yeah, that's the house to go to. I am a garlic girl. I'm gonna pull up and be like, where's the bread at? Pull the garlic down, get some butter, let's make some garlic bread. What do you mean? Like, I could not imagine being a vampire and not able to enjoy garlic. That's just me personally. So, like, what do you mean you need to be invited in to come into the house? Because if it was me, like someone just knocking on my door and they're like, hey, why don't you invite me in? I'm just like, no, thank you, and close the door because first off, I wouldn't even answer the door. I'm gonna be real with you. I'm not even answering that shit. So I guess that's kind of where the idea that they have to be charismatic comes from because you have to be willing to invite them in. So I mean, maybe not. Maybe that part isn't a little bit inconsistent. Now, speaking of different legends and lores and vampire rules, do you know where the idea that vampires cannot come out into the sunlight comes from? It comes from Countess Elizabeth Bathory, aka the Blood Countess, who was Hungarian nobility in the very late 1500s to the early 1600s. Elizabeth Bathory was murdering young maidens to bathe in their blood to give her a much more youthful look and complexion. And when she was inevitably caught, she was sentenced to live out the rest of her days in a tower room with no doors, no window, not an ounce of light coming through. And she stayed in that locked up, completely dark room for about 4 years before she eventually passed away. And that is why we now believe that vampires cannot go out into the sunlight because the Blood Countess herself was sentenced to death in the darkness. If we were to just do a little bit of a zoom out and think about it a little bit, vampires aren't really about monsters. Vampires, they're all about fear. The fear of death, fear of disease, fear of losing control, and also the fear of people changing. Because if someone you love becoming someone you don't recognize anymore, I mean, think about it. That's very scary. Not to mention, we still have vampires today. And no, I'm not talking about the kind that bites you, but the emotional kind. People who drain your energy, leaving you exhausted. They take everything and give back nothing. And somehow we still romanticize them too. So maybe the real vampire lore is just bad dating decisions. But okay, this is where things get a little too real. Not trying to dox myself here, but I actually grew up in Lake County, Florida, and I remember hearing about a case that always stuck with me. So, yes, we are going to dive a little bit into the vampire cult. So, back in 1996, there was a guy named Rod Farrell, and he led what people called a vampire clan. He was their leader, and he genuinely believed that he was a 500-year-old vampire named Vasego, which was a character he created for himself after becoming obsessed with a vampire role playing game known as Vampire the Masquerade. He got so deep into it that he literally believed that he was this Visago persona. We will be entering a little bit of a true crime segment of this podcast. So, in 1996, 16-year-old Rod Farrell had created an online community known as the Vampire Clan. And a member of this community, a girl named Heather, who was 15 years old at the time, reached out to Rod, aka Visago, and told him about her struggles in her home life. She made claims that her parents were abusive and that she was just unhappy at home. So Rod decided to take matters into his own hands and traveled from Murray, Kentucky to Eustis, Florida, where Heather lived. Rod unfortunately had a little bit of a power trip and murdered both of Heather's parents. Now, Rod and his quote unquote vampire clan did flee Florida and went to Louisiana, where they were later caught. Now, this story, when it came out, it shocked so many people, especially locally. And I remember hearing about it growing up. And it just shows that something can start off as a fantasy and turn very real and very dangerous. It's scary how powerful an idea like this can be. Real question here. Would I survive a vampire situation? I don't know. I don't know. Because, like, I think I would. I don't really like people. So if someone showed up to my house, knocked on my door, and they, like, tried coming in, I would just tell them no, go away. Or like a vampire like Nosferatu just showing up at my window, which y'all are sick for thirsting after after that movie came out a few years ago. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with society and their obsession with toxic men and toxic relationships? That's a whole nother let me not get not get off track too much. No, I think I would be good. Speaking of vampire movies, did you guys watch Sinners yet? I really did like Sinners. I think out of all of like the modern vampire movies to come out, I think Sinners has to be my favorite. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Well, I think that's enough thoughts for today.